This is the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. I'm Michael.
And I'm Matt. In this podcast, we're going to discuss growing companies, automation and manufacturing,
and how we're building the lives and businesses we want to see in the world. Do you want to start with your general feelings of the week?
Sure, I can roll first with general feelings. I am feeling behind and a bit overbooked is how I'm feeling this week. We've had a lot of sales calls come in because we did 3 trade shows here. We kind of, not back to back, but tighter than we've ever done. So we did ProMat, Pack, ProMat, and then Automate.
Yep.
And we're having stuff come in from Pack and ProMat, and we have the top leads of Automate coming in then too. So the lingers of those shows are coming and Automate, and I'm having to book like a month and a half or more out now for just initial site visits.
Okay. Yep.
So like I can do meetings, meetings I probably can't even take like a virtual meeting to discuss initial stuff with the client for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's a problem. Like that's a sales top of funnel. And so we can get into that more on like sales and marketing, some goals that I'm setting for myself, because I think this is clearly a tipping point that I'm seeing within the business that we've been trying to get us to. It just, some things are going to have to change.
Well, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah. It's incredible. It means our marketing starting to work. We've got some recipes figured out, which is awesome. So then it's just managing it to make sure that the customers that are coming in on that top of funnel are receiving the quality that we've kind of been known for. So I don't want that.
Yeah, that opens up the whole speed of growth can of worms of how hard you push on marketing. And I'm actually a little bit curious if it might make sense to pull back a little bit, because I know you're going all in on the trade shows, but if you're getting 2 months out to do an initial site visit, you might want to even consider cutting like your 4-star leads and just handling the 5-star until you get there.
I think that's a good approach to it. Let's let you go on general feelings of the week, and then I have some talk.
Some personnel challenges that are continuing on from last week. I'm in a situation where one employee kind of who's new got much worse and much more demanding, and had some unreasonable expectations over time. So we'll have the probation talk and see how that goes. I don't expect it to go well.
I don't know anybody that's ever had one of those turn out good.
Yeah, that's very true. And a long time ago, I heard on some podcasts or read in a book this idea that if you're up at night, you're like talking with your girlfriend or wife about somebody, and that happens twice, you should fire that employee. And sooner or later, every single time that's happened, within the space of like a week, I'm not talking about this thing happened and then a year later, but every time I've had that, every night after night, even with a couple days gap that I'm talking about somebody stressed out, I've always ended up firing that person. And that's one of those things of you got to go through the process, which is annoying, but that's just, I think, where we are. So that's a little bit disappointing. So I got to get back into recruiting mode. And just like you, I'm pretty overwhelmed right now. We've really pulled back on sales and marketing just because we're struggling to keep up and deliver on timelines. And that's kind of coming at the same point where we have this critical mass, where we've sold almost 200 grand of intro loads now in a very short time span. And I'm like, I want to get the product totally polished. For the one that's already out, I want to go out and put a software update to make it as crash proof and as foolproof as possible. And that's eating up a lot of my time personally right now as well. So just I feel spread thin, and I'm right there with you, where to get a meeting with me, it's a couple weeks out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think for that HR. For the challenge with that team member, rather than going straight to probationary, because from
it would be different if it weren't like 4 things. It was you need to double my salary, twice of the range that was on the job posting. Oh, by the way, I'm taking a week off in a week with no notice. Like there's thing after thing after thing. And it's just frustrating.
Yeah. There's like a line though. It's like worry, wonder. But yeah, trying to figure out worry, wonder, ask.
Yeah.
Is how it is. You might want to look into that. Maybe not for this team member, but something where like, I know I've had challenges with team members in the past where like, I'm just approaching it correctly, or correctly is the wrong word, but like just framing it your side too, I found make it a lot better than like times where I've just gotten frustrated and come off really straightforward.
Oh
It
yeah, yeah.
sometimes rubbed it the wrong way, but at
It's
the end
just
of the
like the
day,
combination of like,
yeah,
suddenly someone is just clearly lying to you, combined with, oh, you need to double my salary, combined with plummeting performance. Like all these things are hitting at the same time, and it's just like,
yeah, it's a
y-
recipe that
yeah,
if it's one thing like, hey, you're doing X, Y, Z, and you can walk through that. But yeah, this is you have a different challenge there.
yeah. But the on the accountability thing, I know you were supposed to hold me to. I know I'm jumping ahead, but we're talking about hiring. I
Yeah.
literally just put the job postings up just before this call,
Okay. Well,
which wasn't ideal. I should have done it on Sunday, but at least it's done.
yeah. Well, that's actually a good segue into sales and marketing. Like I said,
Yep.
I'm falling behind. To your comment, all that I was able to maintain was the 5 stars. So the goal from last week was that I would re-engage with all 4 and 5 stars from
Yep.
Automate. I was only able to touch with the 5 stars. The fours had to drop because other good quality responses of existing leads were coming in. So that took priority over the 4 stars, which is
Yep.
basically to your point there. But at the same point, 4 stars, we've sold a lot of deals in there. They're good deals. They're just not the cream, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of those challenges. Like my close rate when I go on a call right now is like 65 to 70%, which is insane. And it tells me our top of funnel sucks. Like the people that I'm getting onto those calls are like they're already primed to buy. Usually they already know me from Instagram or the podcast or whatever. So it's a very easy funnel.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that makes a lot of sense for product side. Cause like if we
yeah.
have a call come in for like our VFS, I'd say we're similar on a close rate for that. We don't have the near number of volume
Well,
that
well,
you're seeing
well,
there, but
I'm particularly talking about like $25,000 semi turnkeys, which are like our bread and butter.
okay.
Typically, we're not doing sales calls for products. Like the documentation is there. With it happens every once in a while, but it's usually unintentional at this point, right?
Okay.
Typically it shouldn't be me handling something that's like a sub $5,000 deal at all.
Okay. That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's one of those frustrating things of I've just really raised my standards of like the staff and the people I want around us and the quality of kind of everything we do and that's slowed growth a lot. And for you, I wonder like maybe if you need to pull back on the number of trade shows or some other things while you handle that growth.
Yeah. I think TBD, the other way I'm
Yep.
looking at it is I've been pushing up hiring a salesperson for as long as possible because I wanted to get this top of funnel performing the way it was
Hmm.
first. So that's where the energy was going. It was working with the marketing agency. We've actually pulled back on budget now with our marketing agency. It was timed where we knew we had this ramp to get a lot of this built out. We actually just finished that last month. And now our budget's come down by like, let's say 40% because we're going into data analysis, tracking for the next 6 months, and just tuning the website.
Yep.
So that budget's now been freed up for trade shows and or a sales hire is the way that I'm looking at it, which means that it's kind of timing there around the sales. It's just I don't have all the SOPs built. So that's what I
Yeah.
need to get done in Q3 as the SOP is. So if we do Pack Vegas in end of September, early October, those SOPs are there for maybe somebody on the team to help me here at develop, or we are hiring around that time.
Yep. I don't know if it's a bad experience with our last sales guy, and we had a couple like outsourced salespeople too. The I think when we get there again, and it's really a when, not an if, right? Because
Yeah.
once that funnel is restored and we're back and staffed properly and caught up, that's something I want to explore again for sure. But I'm kind of now hesitant to have anybody really speaking for the company who doesn't have direct experience, with CNC machines in some capacity.
Let's
And
I
yeah,
have the exact same challenge. I'm not disagreeing with you. It's
yeah,
I've been the face everybody's bought from me personally when we've signed like I've signed every contract and developed history. So it's like that's I don't know, maybe I just need to set that ego aside is really
it's
something I'm
not it's not
challenging with.
giving up control for me. I'm more talking about like I want people representing us who really understand the technicalities and, the real world implementation challenges. And that's one thing when we were recruiting for a salesperson was super, super hard to find someone, both good at sales and who had that CNC apps background.
Yeah.
And, the interface of that Venn diagram is so small, and those people all make a lot of money and are all pretty happy in their jobs already. Right. So that becomes the issue.
Well, and then most sales jobs become so sticky. So if you think you're going to
Yeah.
hire somebody away from another competitor or something like that, they're probably not that great at sales
Yeah.
anyways,
That's the problem.
because
Yeah.
that means they haven't hit their commission benchmarks to make it so like they're just getting recurring sales from existing customers. Or I guess that competitor is not performing. So then they're not getting those recurring customer sales, I guess could be another way to look at that.
Yeah. And the whole challenge with that comp structure, like as a salesperson, is like and I guess there's like always this in business, but like, is it the product mix? Is it the company that they're selling for? Or is it the sales guy being bad? Or, like when there's a struggle, it's hard to pin down what exactly the challenge is.
Yeah.
And of
I
course,
don't,
the link to marketing, right? If you have marketing not working, if you have sales not working, if you have, any of these things, if you have the execution not working, you don't get the repeat orders, any of those pillars fall and the whole thing collapses. And it's hard to make the attribution of what exactly is the problem.
yeah, I think marketing needs to be the top priority, because if you don't have the top of funnel, that salesperson doesn't have anything to do anyways.
Yeah.
Like,
But to an extent, like you still have to monitor their close rate and figure out what they're doing because and we kind of did this. We built the hell out of the top of funnel, and then we lost a huge portion of people in close rate.
yeah.
For once they'd actually gotten onto.
How would you, I guess maybe that's just comes down to a training and a management of that person. Like, do you, like when you bring somebody in, how will you handle the training of that? Obviously, you don't want to be holding their hand the whole way. So is it, hey, just blind copy me on 20% of XYZ emails so I can just review some of them and make sure you're talking to the tone? Like, what
Right.
are
Yeah.
things that you think you'd do differently?
Well, this is kind of a general philosophical change I've had is, I grew the business like really, really fast and we hired, too many people. I think we were at 14, but, like 3 virtual. So we were like 11, 12 people for a little bit. And we had like one middle manager um, and I kind of came to the conclusion, like, I just want a totally flat organization, at least until we're at like 20, 30 people. And, with that comes the reality that you have to pay more. You have to have a higher, level of skill person, um, and I guess I'm also really biasing towards people with a figure it out mindset where, the rather than going and, if the SOP isn't there, I want someone who's able to Google or use ChatGPT or go to YouTube and figure, the damn thing out,
Hmm.
within reason.
Yeah, I
Um,
think we had this conversation kind of offline when we were talking about it. And
yeah.
yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
So I guess right now, like, well, especially while we're, short staffed and it's difficult to prove out every single SOP. The thing I'm trying to bias towards when I'm looking at potential hires, especially, is is this a person that is a higher skill level? I'm trying to hire at a higher level than I otherwise would, and just building out the organization when we were at 10 or 15 people.
Yeah. Um, I think something else that, like you said, for fitting the culture is portion of it. Something I've also seen is like making sure you get the people that are buying into what we're doing, because then there's a loyalty that goes
Yeah.
with it, because we're building something and the team knows that we're not delivering on what we want to be at yet. We're still in a growth phase. And so they want to see it through that growth phase and maintain that loyalty, because yeah, arguably right now, our team members are probably seeing the worst pain of any company that you can feel, because we're in that kind of chasm or growth phase.
Yeah. And I guess that's like one really philosophical thing too that I've really changed my mind on a little bit. I used to be a like, okay, customer first, um, have a customer first mindset no matter what. And that has gone away as I've seen some, pretty insane requests for customers or from customers. And I think generally I've gone to like, we're still a customer centric organization, but we're employees as number one. And if the staff aren't there, if we have customers who are treating our staff badly, I'm becoming a lot more selective with our customers, and even more selective with the people I bring into the organization.
That's I think that's a good way to be at. It takes a while to get there to pick the people that you want to be working with. Doesn't matter if it's in or outside the business.
Yeah. Well, what's weird to me is like, I guess I just don't, I'm not good at hiring yet. I think, I know I pulled it right back to hiring. Sorry about that.
You're
Uh,
fine. I mean, it's still
um,
sales and marketing
yeah, no,
challenge
but
for
I
me
feel like
right
I'm
now.
like good at sales, and we've built out the funnel and we, have a good website and we've gotten back to the newsletter and stuff. And, it baffles me that I can be so selective and so successful, getting good customers to spend 20 to $60,000 with us. And then I have this, struggle to, from 100 candidates, pick the right one and, onboard them and make sure that the right culture fit.
Have
Um,
you ever done any tests when you're bringing these in?
uh-huh.
So something we've done in the
Yep.
past is when hiring for like say software or something, you give them a project. So your top 3 candidates.
Mhm.
All
So,
right.
so that's something that we just implemented actually
Okay.
is when people, so we do the pre-interview, we do the, normal interview. And at the end of the normal interview, this is like for the assembly tech position, we have a gripper that's totally disassembled with all the tools. It's in a little bin. There's no instructions. It's like 10 parts. It's not, you can only put an M5 screw into an M5 hole. So, and we just give them 15 minutes and see how far they get. And the best candidates will finish it in 10 minutes. And I've seen so many candidates who said, "Oh yeah, I know how to use hand tools. I'm very mechanically inclined," and they literally have like one screw in the thing at the end of the time. Um, so that test has been huge for weeding out candidates who interviewed really well.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. We talked about this last week, and I think I'm just a little too fixated on one experience gone wrong, and I just need to move on.
Yeah. I think that's a common theme that I've done too in the past though, Michael. I think you're
Yeah,
probably being hard on yourself. It's when something's not going well, it's hard not to put too much energy on it.
yeah. And that's the other thing too that I'm trying to force myself to is like, we right now, like 95% of our customers are happy, right? And, I can't count the number of turnkeys where they, maybe only did half the meetings, but they're implemented, they're running, they're happy. And when we ask, they tell us that. And we have like one customer who's come back to us after like 9 months who never did any of the training, by the way. They did 20 minutes of one session of the training. And they're like, we're having problems. We want to use the ROI guarantee. And I'm like, well, has it been in service? Like, you haven't contacted us in 6 months. The and we got to finish the training to get you to successfully implement before we can even talk about this, right? And I think I'm just kind of fixated on those two difficult experiences
How
at the
much
same
is the
time.
sale?
25 grand.
Yeah. I'm just curious because like I've reached a point where like when some of those clients, because I've tried chasing
Yep.
that, I've tried getting
Yep.
paid for bills and stuff like that that are just small like that, where they're just not happy. And it's like, just mail it back to me. Like
Yeah.
25 is that weird tipping point though. But it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
If
if
it
it's
were
a
10,
small,
maybe
if
even
it's a,
15, yeah, I
if
would
it's a,
snap my fingers and be done with it.
yeah, if it's just because it's like you end up spending so much energy. You talk about it at the lunch table with the
Yep.
team. They're thinking about that versus writing code for the machine of the customer that's doing an awesome job. And then that one suffers. It's like,
Yep.
just
Yep.
get rid of the pain. It's like
Yeah. No,
sometimes
I'm
the way
definitely
I want to
considering
do
it.
it.
But the thing is like we're closing turnkeys left and right. As we become more selective with customers, and there's like red flags we're monitoring for. Like, for instance, one thing that we like that particular customer, they like refuse to do a Google Meet, right? They're like, we got to talk on the phone and this and that and the other thing. We're like monitoring customers with a scorecard now of do they have did they attend the Google Meet? Did they reschedule the meeting? What time did they pay on? And we've done this always for like what we call like non-compliant customers who didn't do the training. And like in this instance, it was like the second lowest score we've seen in 2.5 years of turnkeys, which is fun, right? But I guess let's steer back to sales and marketing because I haven't actually talked about that. I've just talked about my challenges in the last 2 weeks again.
You're fine. No, I'm enjoying it. We can spin though. Sales and
Yeah.
marketing, you're up.
So sales and marketing, I think I mentioned last week, Priscilla did the newsletter. Noticeable increase in our traffic. $3,000-4,000 of just direct sales from that one newsletter. Like
Nice.
clearly the ROI is there, and that's
Yeah.
people who clicked on it, purchased something immediately, where the cookies, just
Good track.
seamlessly go across. And of course, too, the other thing worth noting is like we clear maybe 15 grand in Shopify every month. the vast majority of our deals are, these turnkey deals, or larger quotes, or yeah, the number of POs we get is kind of annoying. But that was really encouraging to see. Very encouraging to see that the newsletter is doing the thing. And I'm super happy about that.
I think your timing was good too, because we're starting to see like I said, my calendar's getting booked out, but it's like I feel like the market's starting to break free where there's been
Yeah.
all this pent up demand and people holding stuff tight to their chest. They realize they have to eventually play their cards. And
Yeah.
I'm seeing some of that coming through now. We'll see what happens on our side 'cause our sales cycle is still longer, but
Yeah.
it's encouraging to hear that that's what you're seeing from the sales or the
I'm
newsletter.
not actually really sure where the market stands right now. We obviously we saw the kind of normal uncertainty you see with an election cycle, right? So that was kind of January, early February, and that's expected. And then we saw that kind of pent up demand, and then we had the tariff uncertainty that introduced. That was a kind of a week of very minimal sales, followed by, as they kept cranking up, like one of the best couple of sales weeks we've ever had. Period. And now that a lot of those things have backtracked, I think a little bit of that uncertainty is back. Especially for our customers, where a lot of these shops are so dependent on what's happening with international trade, making it domestically versus making it internationally.
Yeah. Like I said, we'll see. It's
It appears to be
I'm having
smoothing
more
out.
I'm having more talks at
Yeah,
least with people that were like holding out and stuff like that. But I
yeah,
have also heard on the other side of it is we're waiting for XYZ. I've heard that in the last week still, yeah. So
yeah, yeah. And it's
but
I wish I just like I had some idea of like where the industry is right now. But that's difficult to tell. And there's always the differential of, some shops are and factories are crushing it, others are struggling, and depending on what market shift. But it was a very rapid like go go go, and obviously we have a smaller sales cycle, so we were able to, I think, capitalize more on it during that
yeah,
time. It was a couple weeks, right? And
geez.
then now, where I'm still kind of waiting to see where things play out. And it's a little harder because I'm spending less on marketing. And I think maybe I even need to push farther and roll our PPC budget back a little bit.
Hmm,
Um, and, I'm also doing fewer sales calls, being more selective with whom I'm talking.
that's good. Do
Well,
you do you
I feel
manage
like that's bad, but
why is that
um,
bad? If you're being more selective, it sounds like it's the right thing to do. Reeling back the PPC, that means your organic stuff starting to work, which is what we've
yeah,
talked about. Where I'm a firm believer in always investing in your organic stuff because that means your customers are more bought in. They're going to be a higher conversion rate when they come through your sales cycle versus, I mean, a pay per click sale is just going to be a lower conversion in my opinion because
right.
there's that lack of loyalty.
Well, yeah, and we treat them differently. Really, we only run people down our product funnel. Like, buy a gripper, buy a vise, buy a tumble blast.
Okay.
We don't actually spend, I think, any money at all trying to get people into turnkeys, which is, of
Interesting.
course, our
Okay.
main revenue source. And that might be a mistake. I don't know.
Yeah, that might be something to if you're cranking back your marketing spend in other areas. If the cash flow is there, you might want to consider just running whatever that pullback is, a portion of that into some testing. That
Right.
might be interesting. That'd be cool to see. Do you track then all of your top of funnels? Like, do you have a report that you look at on a monthly basis? Like these number of
Yeah.
leads came from XYZ?
Oh man, our tracking is terrible. And that's one of those things that's really fallen through the cracks over and over. We have obviously a HubSpot database. We don't really have good tracking, beyond someone clicks on the newsletter and then checks out on the Shopify store.
Okay.
That's something we got to implement better. I mean, even just on our turnkey checklist, where did you hear about us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, 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 go ahead.
I'll say that's something that we're building out now with our agency now that we've rolled through all our build stuff. We have one minor thing to button up, but
Yep.
that's working on. We're trying to figure out because we have the LinkedIn ads that we're running, which is pretty minimal. We have the SEO, and then we have our trade shows. We have our email retargeting of leads that are over a year old, if we revitalize them, if you will. And so they're working on a dashboard and a report for us. So I'll share that as we kind of build that over the next couple months and see if I can hopefully help you there. Because that's been a big challenge of mine too, is like we need to track this because I want to
Yep.
spend more money with what's working.
Right.
And so that's been a focus that we're rolling into.
Yeah. And that kind of reminds me, like, rolling back to like, Michael whining about this one difficult experience. Um, you know, the I'm really trying to be more disciplined about, putting, more money and time behind our winners, right? It's like, okay, we have 1 in 20 turnkeys that has bad compliance and, doesn't have a successful result. Okay, but we had 19 out of 20 where the customers are super pleased, and a portion of those are buying new systems, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the same with our marketing. But if we don't have the data, we're just going off intuition. But like realistically, if I'm being honest with myself, there's a lot of content marketing stuff. There's a lot of updates to our YouTube and content videos about our products and about our turnkey processes that need to be done before I'm going and building out these systems, which is just is what it is. Even though I wish we were there.
Yeah, otherwise you just bury your team where
Yeah.
we've been spending so much time on processes of getting top of funnel, and then engineering of our team's been focusing on getting that efficiency where it's like we're hitting an interesting conversion where I'm hoping to see a really good 2026 growth year is what
Yeah.
I think we just need to button up some details here.
What's a good growth year to you? Like what percentage year on year?
So we did for the initial years of development. Now, a lot of that was just me in the basement. But if you go through when I started in 2014 until 2023, we did 100% growth year over year.
Yeah.
Is what we're averaging. Last year was a flat year.
Yep.
And then this year we're targeting for about 34%. I guess that's pretty accurate. So about a third increase is what we're really looking for out of this year. I think we can arguably see a better growth year next year, but then we're going to have to flatten it back out. I think you can have some of these peaks, but you still end up with an average that needs to be somewhere around that 25 to 35% is a really good sustainable growth.
Well, it's easy to double in the first years too. You go from
exactly.
$250,000 to $500,000, but then going from $500,000 to $1 million, like, okay, that's still doable. Doubling it again in a single year is where it starts to like really, really break down.
And that's exactly what I wanted to have that conversation is because that's what we saw. And I think that's something that the listeners need to hear too, is it's like, you think you can double year over year for perpetuity. And it's like, there's a point where, it doesn't matter. It just, you physically can't build the buildings fast enough if you reach that point.
Yeah. And that's a whole like lifestyle design. What do you want question? Cause I've played that startup, capital game of, let's go raise money and push and double in size every 6 months. And it's not that it's impossible, but it's just not a good lifestyle choice for me at this point.
Yeah. It's a lot of cash to burn. And
oh yeah.
I think we've both kind of settled on that we want it to be a bootstrap business. At least I don't hear you talking about VCs anymore. So it seems like that's where you've settled in on. And I don't know, it's kind of a liberating business style. It takes a little bit longer to grow. Your customers are really loyal this way. And you don't have to answer to anybody other than maybe the bank.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've had a couple like random, from like industry players, I'd say like 50 to 500 people. We've had 3 or 4 of them try to come in and buy us already, which is like, and they come in, they're like, we want to buy 51%. And I'm like, your number's not even close. And what the hell would I do? Like, what would I do with my time?
The number will just keep going up. I mean, I've had people mail me like books and full prospectus of like what they think our business is worth and what they're like. It's like, you serious?
Yeah, that was the last one we got. We got like a laminated pouch with like the background of the company and their evaluation of us. And like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. Some of those get really in depth, and it's like, I've never even talked to you. How much are you how much are you spending just to get a meeting with me?
Yeah.
So, but no topic for another day. I guess anything else sales and marketing from your side?
No. I think one thing you mentioned was, so I guess, yeah. But one thing you had mentioned is like, oh, it's good that I'm reeling back and being more selective. And to me, like, it's what the business needs, but it doesn't feel good. Because like, I want to get back to the point where we're doing, where I'm at least doing 5 to 10 sales calls per week. And I know we're not there right now. And it feels like there's just so much untapped potential. Our follow-up, with, customers and dead deals isn't as consistent. Like, there's just so much we could do, that we're not doing, and the room for growth. And I guess that kind of bothers me, but I'm having the discipline to like, okay, let's get the good people, let's execute, let's finish the projects that we have. because, we're already booked out for a couple of months, and that's the challenge there.
Yeah, and with your sales cycle, that seems like a perfect spot to be. And if your ads kind of work to that, you just turn the ads back up, right? If you see, all right, we're getting light here, I just turn up the ads.
Yeah, that's a challenge with like PPC and especially is like especially Meta and to some extent Google. Like the algorithms changing,
Yeah,
taking an ad down and putting an identical ad back up. In that initial training stage, I've seen like cost per click be, a tenth of what it was on one ad versus another, just from whatever the AI training crap happened in the background. So,
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, you
so
have a lot more meta ad experience than I do. Like, we don't sell products that way. We
yeah,
don't sell services that way.
yeah. But we can move on to the next topic.
I have one thing left.
Okay.
So for our website, the last kind of thing that we are buttoning up is our product section. So
Hmm.
VFS is getting revitalized in the next 1 to 2 weeks here, which I'm excited about. Rather than having kind of a configurator, let's say, that was assuming the customer was going to know what they needed, we're going to machine specific categories for all of our VFS. So if you're looking for a Haas VF2 VFS system, you can simply just open that product on our page
Yeah.
and buy based on what we think your configuration should be to make the buyer's journey just a lot easier.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm just curious, like in the manufacturing of these, like, are they built to order? Do
We
you keep
currently
inventory of them? Yeah.
we currently build all of them to order. I think there's going to be like a couple of them because they're so similar for a lot of these machines, or at least maybe one has two versus one has three that were, of the tiles, if you will. So we're going to start inventorying some of that. We do inventory like our Venturi kits and stuff like that because
Yep.
those go with every single order. And then we inventory some raw stock is about it. And then we can just take what we need to out of it. But I
What's like
think
the,
that'll
the turnaround time like between an order being placed and the VFS going out?
typically 30 days is our goal.
Okay. Yep.
30 days or less. And nobody seems to have had a problem with that. So it's not been a let's carry more inventory or solve this problem, considering we just don't sell a whole lot of them yet. But we've also been focusing so much on services that the goal was to get the top of funnel working for the services, which it is. And now throughout the end of the year with the smaller budget, it's going to be honing in on our products like the VFS and our HMI and automation
Yep.
system.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. Like it could be a double-edged sword. Like you're only getting the customers in who are tolerant of that 30-day lead time, and the ones who aren't might be buying something else. And that's one of those things you can improve it and see what happens. But there's no good way to run an A/B test, which
Yeah. You just have to
is
do
not
it.
fun. Yeah, you have to do it, and then it could fail. But
Yeah.
but I think I had brought up like this is I think for you a killable product line. But and you would push back a lot there. I'm not sure if that's still something that is worth considering, rather than putting that energy into the VFS if it's a small portion of your revenue. And especially if you're struggling to stay on top of sales calls and execute on the main business,
Yeah.
that might be something just consider.
Potentially, there's a couple things that we're trying to do within that side of the business to ramp it up that it supports well, but it's definitely not a off the table conversation. But let's
Yeah.
play this out for another
Yeah.
6 to 12 months because that's been a conversation of if we don't hit metrics internally with it, what do we do and what are those kill metrics?
Yeah, that was a line load for me. I talked about potentially killing that for a long, long time. And I was very emotionally tied up with it. And eventually, I agreed with my team who was telling me to kill it for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, for us, that was the No Design product line last year or in the last 12 months here is that just had to get cut out of the sequence.
And I guess one more marketing thing. Wow, we spent a lot of time in marketing, like always. I think a couple weeks back on our accountability thing, one thing I had failed at was revamping our turnkeys page. And that's something that actually got done. I think this week, like on Monday, and I'm so much happier with the state of that page, taking people through the turnkey process. It's a lot clearer. It looks a lot better. I think we could still use some more content specific to like the different types of turnkeys we do. But perfect is the enemy of done. So at least it got done. And I do think it was seriously insane how bad of a page compared to the rest of our website we had for the thing that was our primary business, that comprises 80% of our revenue. That's
Yeah, you might see some conversion changes there then.
right. Yeah, absolutely. So, anyways, sales and marketing is done for real now.
All right, engineering and R&D.
Do you want to start?
I feel like I've been starting a lot, but I can. So for us, it's been for engineering, we've got the 1701 project where we're case packing and palletizing large cell. We're buttoning up another stage on that one where we have a sign off on 610. So the team's been very focused on hitting that date where we have to have a meeting with the client to review the CAD. They'll be on site to verify that everything can pick and pack as planned. No concerns on meeting either of those. It's just 610's the date that they have the client meeting. So the goal is to have everything kind of buttoned up well before that next week. So they have some time to clean up some stuff. So that's really been the team's focus. The other one is the reason I had to push this meeting back 30 minutes was we're going through our Gants for the next 3 months here. And kind of, I guess, 3 months turning towards the end of the year, forecasting our R&D budgets and how that's all looking. Because at the beginning of the year, there was budget set of what we had for sales and marketing from engineering, what we had for R&D. And so a lot of that was making sure that we're tracking correctly. And what ended up happening is we're leveling some stuff further out into 26 to make sure that we keep those kind of checks and balances in place so we can focus on our customers.
Yeah. That sounds like more general shop improvements, like production leveling.
Yeah, it was engineering R&D is what I'd call it, because I think the big thing that's so tough for businesses like ours is we love building things. And there's nothing better than building something that doesn't have an end date. It doesn't have a statement of work. It doesn't have a really defined persona because you're developing something new. Well, you create those things up front, it can turn into a tinkering mission. So it's making sure to keep those statements of work aligned. And when it feels like something's getting out of line, have those conversations, or if times appear kind of off it. I mean, that's a real R&D thing. Like I've seen that everywhere I've worked.
Yeah. I mean, it's a discipline. And, when I was in that mess of a metal 3D printing project that just swelled and swelled and swelled, it was, chasing perfection. If you keep throwing money, that's one thing that in 2-second lean, which is what I read before Toyota Way at your recommendation. Paul Akers talked a lot in that book about how money makes problems worse a lot of the time. Throwing more money at something can just make the outcome substantially worse and less efficient and more problematic.
Yeah, sometimes you need that.
Yeah, and deadlines, right? Like you need the constraints.
I like deadlines. That's one of the main reasons I really like trade shows is it creates an objective or a very fixed date. It's something I saw when I worked at Ring Brothers. Now we never built Gants like we do at Develop. So it was the last month was torture in the shop there. But it creates a very fixed time. Like if you're going to take this machine and be proud of it at the show, it has to be done by X date. And I think the key is especially when you have great teams, the pride in what you take is real. So everybody wants to make sure it's good for that date.
Yeah. It makes a ton of sense.
So that's one of the other reasons I like adding more shows in here, because we're starting to
it forces you to get projects done.
Well, it forces us to finish features.
Right.
Because that's really what it's turned into is MRS XYZ feature we're going to have done, or accessory. And that's what it's actually getting into the accessory category. So it'd be awesome that we do a show a quarter, we release an accessory or a new feature a quarter would be the way that I'd start to seeing where that could go. And it's a very realistic objective to set with that within our R&D budget.
Gotcha. Yeah, deadlines, I gotta be better with those. On not with customer projects, but specific to internal R&D that has been, getting shuffled around as needed. Specifically, I'm thinking the extra load or the launch of the GIMVAC or something. I think your commitment dates, even if they're just internal, are something that eventually I should bring in house.
Do you build Gants around those projects?
Well, and that's one thing that we moved. So when we fired our machinist, who couldn't show up on time, and then we had a real culture shift, which led to our assembly guy leaving, and when that happened, we just went back to sticky notes because we're okay, it's kind of complicated, and we've been in that system for I don't know 2-3 months now, and the problem with it is really that we're not tracking the full time. Like you had mentioned
It's
in
okay. Sorry, keep going.
yeah,
I
you
was
had
thinking
mentioned
out
in,
loud.
in the last podcast, like with your GANs, the thing that's critical is that, you have the start date there and understood, just visually on a calendar so that, people don't get comfortable with, oh, I have a month. And then they get 2 weeks away from a month long project. And then all of a sudden you have this cascade of GANs getting pushed back.
So I thought you had taken sticky notes and you were looking at it like your week or Scrum board, because I thought of sticky notes
Right.
completely
Yeah.
different. The way we used to manage sticky note Gantt would be the way we would build a team Gantt is what I used to use back in
Right.
the day. So I'd build out Gantts and team Gantt, and then the Scrum board would lay out the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So what the expectations were of each team member would be laid out in sticky note there. So I
Yeah.
was assuming you were still running Gantts and then putting sticky
We're doing
notes.
sticky note. It's basically a Scrum board, but there's no, like there's the daily tasks and some deadlines on it, but there's not the Gantt charts. And I think what needs to happen is we need to revert back to a simpler version of our old Gantt chart system. And it just needs to be like on a TV next to the whiteboard that, we're going through on a daily basis.
I think that would make sense because like even for like our sales Gants that now we've started allocating, I think you actually recommended a processor came somewhere during the podcast
Yep.
conversation was like allocating X number of mechanical electrical hours and just taking that right out, putting it in
Right.
the Gantt because we laid that out and then we started looking at our R&D and it was like, oh, well, there's a reason that we've had these conflicting things. We just kept thinking we were double spending those hours. And
Right.
so I was like, all right, sales is clearly the priority to grow the company. These R&D tasks don't necessarily have to be done uh, at these dates, but these things need to be done because otherwise we've got a wave of other projects that we're not even, what's the point in having these next month of on-site visits if I can't bid those projects in the 2 weeks following?
Yeah. 100%.
So I feel like I ranted there for a second.
Well, our engineering and R&D, the Gimbac's getting finalized finally. So those got taken back for rework. So the Gimbac's going to be launching. The big thing that I've been focused on, we just completed install of an interload, a local one. The machine, had that update issue. So the host is updating it. So we got to go out again and do the final calibration. But, in so doing, we had this debacle where the machine was the wrong year from what we had planned. So then we ended up engineering a new rev of the interload entirely. And something actually really great came out of that. We found with a little design tweak that we could get, the standard configuration is 9 pallets. We found on the UMC 750 in particular, we now have the option to expand up to 16,
Oh,
which
wow.
obviously is a huge number.
Yeah, nearly
Increase.
a 50% increase.
Yeah, yeah. Now that puts us in the interesting position where we have 2 of these scheduled for late June, where we're going to go back to the customers and be like, hey, do you want the upgrade? Obviously you're going to have to pay for the extra pallets and the change, and it's going to delay the system a little bit, but you have the option to bump from the 9 that you would originally spec'd out to 16. So that's like good news, but obviously I wish we would have figured that out before we did the initial sale, so we didn't have to go potentially rework at this point. But I want to give those customers the option, because another 50% capacity for a pallet loader is huge.
Yeah, that means that if they have more than one machine on their floor, they can possibly buy the next one from you sooner.
Yeah, it should ROI a lot faster. And we're basically doing it as like pretty much the hardware cost upgrade. I'm not charging for like the software or upcharging the system in any way, but another 8 pallets and machine pucks and calibration. It's some serious additional time.
Yeah. No, I like going back to that and giving them the option at least. I
Yeah.
mean, that you're showing that you're wanting to be more than a partner than a transaction.
Yeah.
And I really believe in doing business that way. Like I wish manufacturing could be more like leases on buildings where I'm going to manufacture with this partner that I'm choosing and I'm going to sign a contract with them to CNC machine, do my PCB assembly, my box building for the next 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And then depending upon the length of that contract, that manufacturer can then invest further into their automation or manufacturing and buy the right equipment or tools to do it the right way.
Right. Yeah. And the stuff just ROI so fast. I mean, like the interload's like sub 30 grand before you look at the pallets. And obviously you got to buy, 9 to 16 pallets and then 9 to 16 vices. And that's kind of the detriment of every pallet system ever. But the, you know,
It is true.
yeah, that's the challenge with pallet systems. You try to build a Trinity and then they sell you the chunk stuff, and now you're $250,000 in on top of the $200,000 robot. And that's, we have that problem just less.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are kind of the R&D things. Personally, I'm doing a full comprehensive review of the intraload code right now, just because I want to make this as crash proof as possible. And we're making little tweaks here and there, little efficiency gains, but the that's kind of into the minutia of the project.
Yeah. You definitely don't want to pile up somebody else's spindle. That one hurts real good.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to do, but we can't, at the end of the day, control if people are going in and messing with macros. It's like if someone is going in and messing with their probing macros, can they really be mad about having caused the crash?
Yeah.
That's the challenge, yeah.
Ideally, you lock out as much of that as possible.
Yeah, we're locking out as much as possible, but at the end of the day, we don't have root level access to the machines, and so that is what it is, and
yeah, no, I mean, the same thing when we release a machine, we have different security levels. You have operators, technicians, setup, or engineering. And if for some reason they just don't log out of engineering and you let an operator run, talking from experience here, and they change an offset they shouldn't, you can pile up a very expensive machine very quickly because there just wasn't, I mean, you put the safeguards in there, but there's
you
only
can only
so
control
many.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah, if they want to bypass them and allow stuff to run in certain settings, that's just going to happen.
But yeah, I mean, our way around that right now is just, especially with as busy as we are, is putting more effort into screening the customer and making sure they're,
Yeah.
kind of ready to automate, which I think is a mistake that we've made before, is we've run into customers who were potentially not really ready to automate. They just hadn't like cleaned up their general shop systems, or you didn't have standardized tooling, and, like these kind of basic things of running an efficient operation. And it's nice to be in the position where we're able to do that.
It's a really good point to look for those processes, because like I had a sales call this week that really stood out to me because they're like, we want to get into custom machine building because we've automated so much of our
Yeah.
machine side. Where like you can only automate so much on the other side of their manufacturing with off the shelf purchased upgrades for their machines. And like we've reached the custom machine level, and they explain like why they progressed to that. And I was like, it's really interesting. I've never had a customer sell me on why they're ready for custom machines and they're excited for the risk. Like it's like they explained to me what they knew they were biting off. It was like, all right, this is great.
Hey, and those are the customers I get excited about now, is the ones who, they have, 9, robotic pallet loaders, and they have, this and that and the other thing, and they're running these other machines successfully because I know they know how to do automation. And those are the customers that, I really am like, okay, yeah, let's do a semi-turnkey. Let's knock this out. The customers I've become skeptical of are the ones who like are entering into automation, but not doing so in like a, like I try to steer those customers like, let's, do a spindle gripper and a vise and like automate something simple.
Get a win under the belt.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's some people who just have the vision of automation of like, I'm just going to throw this thing on the table and it's just, going to be magic, and I'm not going to, try to learn or do the training. I'm not going to commit, a couple of weeks to it. And those are the ones that we try to avoid. And that strategy so far has worked out very well for our success rate.
That's good. Okay.
Cool. You want to move on to the next section?
I think it was company-wide updates and improvements. I guess I did kind of start that one. It was the R&D Gantz. We're kind of just tuning that in. Our team's just really watching our priorities and budgets really well. It's exciting to see that. Like, I feel like that's one of the most common questions I hear now in a resource meeting is, what's the priority? What, something has to give, what's giving. And so it's really good to see that. Because it's keeping our team very focused on how we can grow this business as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense.
So that's pretty much it. No real changes. Just I'm excited to continue to see the team focusing on what we've been deploying over the last 12 months.
Yeah. For us, we had a fire inspection. So that led to a lot of things getting cleaned up. And I took it as an an opportunity to try to, push farther than what the inspection really required. The we had this like woodworking area that I've been talking about getting rid of for a while, that we basically moved into like an intra-load assembly area. Where there were the bigger scale projects or the things where there's some amount of custom nature, where you just want more space and more
Yeah.
equipment around you. So that's been a really good change. We made a bunch more like labeled neat Costco racks. Moved a bunch of the equipment, got rid of some more stuff, and yeah, I mean that's really been a fair amount of time, but
We should chat about that, the bin. So I commented on your
oh yeah,
Instagram,
yeah,
and I'd like to learn more about, because I mean, your shop is looking really good, Michael.
it's looking
Like
much
it's
much nicer.
like you've made some really solid improvements. What I was meaning by putting slat wall or
Yeah,
shelves to the back is having it so if because you built out each cell, from my understanding, you
right.
have a workbench that's dedicated to the products that go on it,
Yep.
right? Could you potentially have all those tools hanging up there? Or like if you're pulling to build something, you can hang the bin from that?
That's what we have. So that one picture you commented on didn't really, you didn't really see it, but
Okay.
almost all of our walls, we just have run screws, and it's every single position is labeled, so every single tool is on the wall.
Oh,
The
so there's screws on the wall.
Yeah,
Yeah, I missed that.
yeah,
It's
and that
just,
was like a lean approach of like we're not going to buy some like fancy system, or really try to implement something hard until the basics are done.
yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah,
and
I didn't see that. That's
what I
cool.
don't like about like pegboard or slat wall, it's too easy to add stuff and it's too difficult to see where things were.
Yeah.
Like I think like pegboard or slat wall would be fine if you like, spray painted like the silhouette of the tool. It has to be obvious that something's missing, right? And I think that's the reason I avoided going one of those universal systems at first.
Yeah, that works out well. I mean, what at Rings, all we did was we had bins that you'd pull. So if we're assembling
Yep.
XYZ hinge, you pull those just like you have on your Costco racks. And then we had a bin of tool, which is what it sounds like you do. And we'd put that up on the shelf. That worked really well. But we had, 1,000 SKUs, and they all
Yeah.
together only had like 10 different fasteners and like a
Yeah,
total of
we're
20
not at the
different
level
pencil
of
hardware.
like that detailed part in fastener consolidation yet, but the that's a project that's going to be a ways out to and kind of have to phase one by one.
You have so many different things
You
too,
know,
where it's like the family of products I was dealing with there was really easy to be like, no, we only, if you're designing this feature because it's the bottom portion of the hinge, you're going to use a 3A16 by
right?
one of these two lengths. Those are your two options, depending
Hmm.
upon weight of hood.
Yeah,
They were just like, it just narrowed it down inherently so quickly.
yeah. That's that is a nice thing about having like a very narrow product mix, and one of the challenges. But at least the system is managed, and thank God for Mastercar, because it lets us keep really really low Kanban quantities, and keep not a huge amount of money tied up in fasteners.
We went to, and maybe you don't have as many fastener needs as we do. We bought some of those Fastenal cabinets and then
Yeah.
relabeled them as we need. We've seen, so like our pneumatics are going into that now, all our pins are going in, but we got all our hardware fasteners done. But we have such a, with custom machines,
Right.
we more or less narrowed down
Yeah.
to families and then X variances
Yeah,
and
we have like
millimeters.
those bin systems, but they're not in like the product assembly area.
Yeah.
The product assembly area, for instance, like even we kind of went back and forth about like what if we have a screw that's used in multiple places, and we just went to like we're gonna make two Kanban bins, or as many Kanban bins as needed. They're all color coded, and it's just one more order tag to pull. It's pretty quick, and then for McMaster parts, which are a huge number of the components that go, because we have so many screws in our rings and so on. We just, the traditional Kanban system, you pull a card from the back, but we found those would
Yeah.
get got lost. So we slide a card that says like restock into it. Someone goes through at the end of the day and then types in the McMaster number and then titles it where it goes. And then we put the restock card when it gets ordered goes ordered, and then from there it gets restocked and that card gets replaced.
Yeah. That, if that system works, your team's using it. That sounds like a great solution.
Yeah, it's been great, and Arta's made things a lot easier. Obviously, we have our own spin on it with the little inserted cards that have a little laser cut window so we can see what the product is while still seeing the flag.
Mhm.
But yeah, I love that system, and it's been working really well.
That's great.
Cool. Next
I guess,
section.
what was that?
I said next section.
I think accountability is the next one.
Yeah.
What do we want to see out of each other for next week? Or what
Well,
do
well,
we
I guess
want
we
to
can
set?
recap on last week.
Yeah.
So for I've been whining about getting that turnkeys page done. I think 2 weeks ago that was my failed one. Obviously finished that, and then the job postings I finished like literally 2 minutes before logging on here. And then for you, we had follow up with all the 4 and 5 star leads, and and you narrowed it down to the 5 stars.
Yep. Yeah, I just wasn't able to make it to that. And then the other one prior, I think, was that getting the Gantt for leveling out sales and marketing a little bit better with the team expectations. So those two are
Yep.
done.
Yeah.
What do we want
For
to set
next
for?
week, that's the hard bit.
Yeah. I mean, I
For
need to get through my 4 stars.
yeah. So let's make that yours. Get through the 4 star follow up.
Yeah.
Do you
It's
want to
interesting.
get through your 4 star follow up? I mean,
See,
that's a
that's an
whole other thing.
yeah. I was actually gonna point that out. Is it's like it seems like we're just doing general task lists is what this has turned into. Where it's like
Yeah, which is
these are
what I
things.
don't want.
Yeah, these are things we should be doing, and it's like, what are
Well, for
things that are
me,
challenging each other to grow our business?
for me, it's things I've been putting off, right? So it's like, I loathe going through Indeed and asking for questions, and because of that, I've been putting off doing, like, actually posting the job listing again.
Yeah,
The and kind of the same with the turnkeys pages, like just a lot of work. So for me, I've been targeting things that need to get done that help the business succeed that I'm not doing.
that's very.
So
Are
so
you
maybe
picking
for like
one there?
the 4 and 5 star leads, were you gonna do that anyways last week, or was that like?
I was, yeah. So that was my goal, was to get through those anyways. The
Yeah.
issue is, like, I look at my calendar, or I guess it wasn't last week, it was this week, which is 2 days. We're into day 3. It's just
Mhm.
turning into that, like, all day yesterday, I had 3 meetings.
Yep.
So I was in Milwaukee all day, bouncing between site visits and client meetings.
Yeah.
So that day's gone. Like, it just disappears, but it
Right.
disappeared because 5 stars or high quality leads turned into the requirement of a site visit, which then pushes
Well,
other
but
sales
I
back.
think that's fine. I guess what I'm saying is, like, let's maybe use this as what's a thing that you should do or need to do that you might put off, or that you want me to check in on in a week's time.
That's a good question. I don't really know if I have a solid answer for that one right now, because it's. Hmm. Do you have something on top of mind for you?
I've got to cross post the job postings.
Okay.
I think I need to do Instagram videos, saying, hey, we have an opening again. I think those need to get cross posted to LinkedIn and to Facebook, and I need to cross post the actual listings onto a couple more platforms. I think that's just got to be what I prioritize right now.
Yeah. Mine is probably just giving less attention to some of the lower quality sales, even though that's very difficult for me to do.
Yeah, I got to do that too. I mean, I'm not going to use that as my accountability thing, but
I don't know
I've
how
got to
we
get that discipline as well.
I don't know how we hold myself accountable to that, because usually my solution is brute force. Like,
Mhm.
I just work more hours and I get it done.
I
But I
know.
think that's really the thing that
That's what I've been doing too.
I've been challenging myself over the last couple of years, is continue to, I mean, it's thankfully come down drastically. I'm not 100 hours, I'm not 80 hours anymore. So it's
Right.
like, it's getting to a manageable point, but it's also got a little one
Yeah.
at home that I really enjoy. So make sure to focus on that.
Thank you so much for listening to Matt and I's conversation this week on the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. If you like the podcast, please share it with a friend or give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll be back next week to continue sharing our respective journeys in life, business, and industrial automation. Thanks so much.